Okay. What's that?
You look funny on the video.
Oh, whatever. Who cares? That's the important thing, not the face. So at any rate, okay. So at any rate, let's just review a little bit about the. We'll just review a little bit about the rabbinical calendar, and we had said that there's this very important thing called the molad, which is 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 3 1/3 seconds, and it ticks off intervals in time every this amount of time, tick, 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 and those ticks are also called the molad, those places in time which are separated by this. If we'll say this is X time, and we have an amount of time, and then X passes, and an amount of time, X passes, etc., etc. And so we have these spaces in time which are ticked off, which are also called the molad. So this is a molad, this is a molad, these are all molads, and this over here, this space, this amount of time between the two molads is also called a molad, but to distinguish it, we can call it the molad emsai, which means the average molad, or the average synodic period of the moon, which we said is the average time that it takes from one new moon to the next new moon, or one full moon to the next full moon, etc., etc. Okay? We also said that we have 12 months, and in the leap year 13 months in the rabbinical calendar, and they start with Tishrei, and they alternate 30-29, 30-29 all the way through. Except we have 2 months, Cheshvan and Kislev, which can, in the case of Cheshvan, it can get an extra day to make it 30 days. In the case of Kislev, it can lose a day to make it 29 days, which means that we can have a configuration of years which is either 353, 354, or 355 days. And if it's a leap year, when we have Adar the first added in, over here we get another 30 days, which means we can get 383, 384, or 385. Okay? In the most standard configuration, we're going to get 354. Okay? That means we get an alternating pattern of 30-29 all the way through, and we don't get an extra Adar the first, which adds an extra 30 days. Okay? If you add that all up, you'll get 354 days. If Cheshvan jumps from 29 to 30 days, then that becomes 355 days. If Kislev drops down from 30 to 29 days, you get 353 days. And then if we add in the 30-day Adar the first, that jumps it up from 353 to 383, 384, or 385. Okay? So these are the 6 values which are possible for the length of the year in the rabbinical calendar. Okay? There are no other lengths that the rabbinical calendar can have in terms of its years. It can only be one of those 6 values. Okay? Now, how do we figure out which of those 6 values it is? We need to take this molad, okay, and we need to figure out those 12 points. If we start from Tishrei of 1 year, we need to figure out the next 12 molads until we get back to Tishrei of the next year, meaning the 13th. The 13th molad would be the Tishrei of the next year, and we need to figure out that molad of the next Tishrei. If it's a leap year, then we have 13 months in between, and it would be the 14th molad after that. Okay, and if you remember the calculation we did yesterday, is we tried to figure out if the molad of Tishrei 5758 falls out on the 1st of October 1997 at 22:07 and 10 seconds. We added this amount. To that time, we added 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, 330 seconds. And we found that the molad, that point in time again, of the next month, Cheshvan, works out to be, where was it? Friday, the 31st of October 1997 at 10:51 and 13 1/3 seconds. Okay? So what we did is we ticked off those molad points for 2 months. For Tishrei of 1997 and then for Cheshvan of 1997. However, we said that this molad of Cheshvan is irrelevant to when Rosh Hodesh Cheshvan is going to be. But the only thing that's relevant is that Tishrei has 30 days. So the first of Tishrei is on October 1st, and we add 30 days, then the first of Cheshvan, meaning the Rosh Hodesh of Cheshvan, is going to be on the 31st of October. Okay? which happens to work out the same day as the Molad, but even if it didn't work out the same day of the Molad, we don't go by this exact point here. We go by the fact that Tishrei has 30 days, okay? And likewise, we can go around and get the Molad for each month, okay? But the point is that in the rabbinical calendar, the only Molad that is important, essentially, is the Molad of Tishrei, okay? So here we have the Molad of Tishrei 1997, or in the rabbinical reckoning 5758, okay? And we said this exact point in time right here. We need to now calculate the Molad of 5759, meaning of the fall of 1998, a year later, okay? And I want to go ahead and actually do that calculation. We're going to not even take into account the Molad of Heshvan. What we'll do is we'll start here with the Molad of Tishrei, which we said is at 5 days, meaning the 5th day of the week, 4 hours, 129 parts, which is 7 minutes and 10 seconds, but I'm going to leave it 129 parts, okay? Now 5758 is, let me just bring this up here for 1 second. Okay, 5758 is, I just have to check one thing here.
Bill.
Okay, 5758 was not a leap year, which means there are 12 weeks in a year, okay? So what we need to do is take this number, multiply it by 12, and then add to this number, and then we'll get the Molad of the following year. Okay? Is everyone kind of following along here? Okay, so we're going to do that. I'm going to take the 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes. No, I'm going to do it in parts. No, I'll do it now. 44 minutes and 3 1/3 seconds. And I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 12. Okay? Which means this gets multiplied by 12, this gets multiplied by 12, this gets multiplied by 12, this gets multiplied by 12. Okay, we'll start with the seconds. 12 times 3 1/3 works out to 40. So we get 40 seconds. Okay? 44 times 12 is going to work out to, let's see, 440 plus another 88 is going to be, let's do this. It's going to be 528. 12 times 12 is 144, and 29 times 12 is going to be 290 plus 58, which means it's going to be 348. Right? 18, 4, 5, 15 is going to be, no, that doesn't make sense. 1 second, 14. That should be 2, so it's 348. Okay, so we multiply it by 12, we get now 348 days, 144 hours, 528 minutes, and 40 seconds. Okay, this is the amount of time that passes in 12 months, meaning 12 of those molad ticks, and we now add this time to the original time, which was our molad for Tishrei 1997, then we'll get the molad for Tishrei 1998. Okay? So I'm going to do it, I think I'm going to do it this way. Okay? 40 seconds stays the same. 528 minutes, we need to convert that into hours. Okay? So we're going to do 528. I'm just going to put the calculator here. And the reason I'm going through all this is exactly how the calendar is calculated by the rabbis when they figure out these calculations. Let's bring this up here. So we want to convert 528 minutes into hours. So 528 divided by 60 gives us 8.8 hours. Okay, which means it's 8 8/10 hour. Okay, 1/10 of an hour is 6 seconds, as 6 minutes. So 8/10 of an hour is going to be 48 minutes. So we really get here 8 hours and 48 minutes. Okay, the 48 minutes stay here, just as the 40 seconds stay here. The 8 hours go over to here, and we get 152 hours. Okay, now we need to convert this 152 hours into days. So we're going to do 152 divided by 24. And that comes out to 6 1/3 days. So the 6 days over here goes over here. A third of a day remains here. A third of a day is 8 hours. So we get 8 hours added to this. Right. We get 8 hours, 8 hours remains here. And 6 days gets added here. So it's 354 days. Okay? So what we've now done is taken those 12 molad periods and said that those 12 molad periods work out to be, let me just check these. So I actually wrote them here. Those 12 molad periods works out to be 354 days, 8 hours, 48 minutes, and 40 seconds. Okay? Which means that the molad of the next tishrei is going to be this amount of time after the molad of this tishrei. Okay? So far so good? Let's figure out then when the molad of 57:59 is. Here we have 57:58 up until here. Here we have 57:59. Okay? First of all, we can figure out what day of the week this is on. Okay? In order to do that, we need now to add, if this was it started on day 5, then I'm going to add this to 354, and I'm going to get 359. So it's on the 359th day. I'll divide that by 7 and get my remainder. 358 divided by 7 is going to be 1 times 7. 1 times 7 minus 358 is -1, so it comes out to be when the remainder when divided by 7, which would be written for any computer people, they know the sign. Modulo 7 is 1. So the molad of 57:59, the molad of Tishrei 57:59 falls out on the first day of the week, meaning, what's the first day of the week? Saturday night into Sunday. Okay? This is Saturday into Sunday. Okay? First day of the Hebrew week. Okay? On that day, we know it falls out on what? On the 8th hour. Okay? The 8th hour. And we said that for the rabbinical calendar, the hours start at 6 o'clock p.m. Okay? The day is divided into 24 hours, just like it is in modern times. But the first hour of the day starts at 6 p.m. So the 8th hour of the day is going to be when?
8 a.m.
No, it starts at 6 p.m.
That's what they tune.
Exactly. 2 in the morning. Okay, so we got 2 in the morning. Okay, 2 a.m. So now we're talking, the first day is Saturday to Sunday. We're talking about Sunday at 2 a.m. And then we have 48 minutes and 40 seconds. So we're talking about exactly Sunday at 2:48, 40 a.m. A.m. is already implied by the 2 here, since it's a 24-hour count, but I'll put it down anyway. And that falls out on a Sunday. The only thing remaining is the actual date within the Gregorian calendar. Okay? Well, we know that that this fell out on the 1st of October 1997 at 22:07:10, which is at 10 o'clock and 7 minutes in the evening. And we know we had to add this amount of days to it, this many more days to it. And so what we can do is we can add exactly 354 days to it. Okay, if we do that, then we'll see, and we'll get back to this point right over here. So let's do that. To the 1st of October 1997, we're going to add 354 days. And in order to do that, let's see, here. Well, we can add 365 days. If we add 365 days to the 1st of October 1997, since 1998 was not a leap year, then we know that we're going to end up back the 1st of October 1998, right? So if we start with this, let's see where we can, paper. So if we start with 1st of October 1997 plus 365 days, we've now gone through an entire year. We're going to end up with the 1st of October 1998. Okay? But we don't want to add 365 days. We want to add 354 days. We drop back 11 days. So we drop back 11 days from the 1st of October 1998. We drop back one day. I'm just going to do it on my finger to make sure there's no mistakes here. If we drop back one day, it'll be the 30th of September, 29th, 28th, 27th, 26th, 25th, 24th, 23rd, 22nd, 21st, 20th. Okay, so we're back. This is minus 11 days. So we're back to the 20th of September, 1998. Okay? So, what we're talking about here is that this is actually going to be the 20th of September. Let me just check one thing. This is 5 days, and this is 354 days later. So the 20th of September, 1998, is actually going to be this Saturday night, okay, because we're talking about 354 days later from this. So then by the time we get to Sunday, it should be the 21st of September. So it's the 21st of September, 1998. I'm just going to check on the calendar and make sure that that was actually a Sunday. And 21st of September 1998 was a Monday. So what did I do wrong? I did something wrong, but I'm not going to go back and correct it. Let me just think about it for 1 second here. If this is the 20th of September, this is starting really from the beginning of the day. Which is no, it will be the 20th of September. Wait a second, October, and okay, because this is already 5 days, 4 hours. Let me just check for 1 second. One thing. Okay, I'm just going to assume right now that it's the 21st of September 1998, even though I'd have to go back and check the calculation. Okay? At any rate, what we've done here is we've figured out. No, I'm going to say it's 20 because I don't know what exactly the calculation is right here. 20 September 1998 is going to be on. We answer Sunday, 20 September. Okay, fine. Okay, so what we've done here is we have now exactly 2 consecutive molads. The first molad of 5758, okay, occurs at, as we said, the 1st of October, 1997 at 22:07:10, and the molad of Tishrei 5759 occurs on the 20th of September, 1998 at 2:48 and 40 seconds a.m. Okay? That means basically that Rosh Hodesh Tishrei is, for 5758, is going to occur on the 1st of October, 1997. And Rosh Hodesh Tishrei for 5759 is actually going to occur not on the 20th, but on the 19th of September, 1998. Okay? Why is that? That's because this 20th of September is already at 2 o'clock in the morning, so we go back to the beginning of the day, it's actually 19th of September at 6 p.m. Okay? And from this, we can figure out how many days are in between these 2 periods of time, okay? And what it should work out to is that there are exactly 354 days between these 2 periods of time, okay? And that's the way the rabbinical calendar is calculated. I calculate the exact point in time of the molad for the first year, and then I calculate the exact point in time for the molad of the next year, and then I figure out how many days are between those two molads. Just a little bit. How many days are between those two molads? And then I know I'm going to get one of those numbers. The amount of days between those two molads is either going to be 353, 354, 355 if it's a non-leap year, or it's going to be 383, 384, or 385 if it is a leap year. Yes, Bill? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, the question. Okay. And once it's worked out how many days are in the year, then I can lay out my calendar months. Okay? So for instance, I can go back here, and I know that if it's going to be 354 days, then I know that I'm going to have an alternating pattern of 30, 29, 30, 29 all throughout, and that'll add up to exactly 354. Okay? If I had worked out that, or if it had turned out that this year had 355 days, then I would know that I go back and I add an extra day to Cheshvan. And if it turned out that it was 353 days, then I know that I take one day away from Kislev. Okay? And if it were a leap year, it would be the same kind of thing, except 383, 384, and 385. Okay? So just to sum up, okay, on a more qualitative rather than quantitative basis, the way that the rabbinical calendar works in its most basic level is I find a point in time, which is the molad of Tishrei of 1 year. I find the exact point in time, which is the molad of Tishrei for the following year. Okay? I figure out the amount of days between those 2 points, and that amount of days is going to turn out to be either 353, 354, 355, or 383, 384, 385. Once I know how many days I have in the year, then I can lay out my calendar. Okay? And I lay out my calendar according to these lengths of the months. Okay? As we saw before. And if it's a leap year, then I add in my extra 30 days, which is Adar the 1st, which comes in between Shvat and Adar the 2nd. Okay? So far, so good. Any questions? I know it's very, very technical, but it's also very interesting the way the whole thing is laid out. What's that? The ladies are gone a long time ago. Okay, well, there's still one lady here, right? Okay. Oh, I didn't see.
You're wondering which one is the lady.
There's two, but they're kind of asleep. Okay. At any rate, see, there are differences between the sexes. No one wants to. At any rate, that's how the calendar is laid out. Okay. Now, has anyone heard of the idea of the postponements or the dichiot? Yeah. Okay. Usually, this is a very big deal. And when I've spoken to people who switched over to the biblical calendar, they always talk about the evil of the rabbinical calendar and the dichiot or the postponements. Okay. And they say, wow, everything would be great with the rabbinical calendar, except for this evil idea that if Rosh Hashanah falls out on a Sunday, then we push it off to a Monday. Okay, have you guys all heard of this idea? And really, it's a red herring, because even if there were no such thing as dichiot within the rabbinical calendar, it would still not mimic the exact time that we would see the new moon. Okay, because of the system we went through, and because of the system we explained here, and the way it's set up, the rabbinical calendar is never ever meant to always hit the new moon each month. Because it's going by what? Because it's going by this molad, this average period, this average synodic period. And we said the actual synodic period is sometimes going to be a little bit less, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit more. Okay? So even if we didn't have such a thing, or even if the rabbinical calendar didn't have such things as the postponements or the dichiot, then nonetheless it would still be missing the actual observable new moon much of the time, okay, or part of the time. But the dichiot, nonetheless, complicate the situation even more. Okay, and I'll explain what the dichiot are and how they work very briefly. I'll explain the first two, because those are the most well known. Okay, the first one and the most famous one is something called Lo Adurosh. Okay, which stands for Lo means no. Adu is an acronym for Aleph, Dalet, and Yud. Okay? I'll transliterate it into English. Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and therefore it means the first day of the week, or what we would say Saturday to Sunday. Call it Sunday. Dalet is the fourth day of the is the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and therefore means a fourth day, which would be Tuesday into Wednesday. And Vav, it's a Vav, no. Yud, and Vav is the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which translates as the sixth day of the week, which means Thursday into Friday. Okay? So Lo Adu Rosh, which is the first of the Dichiyot. That's it in Hebrew. Dichiyot. Okay? Or postponements. Says the following. If we calculated, as we did before, okay, we calculated this Molad of Tishrei, and we figured out when that first day of Tishrei should fall. If that day happens to be either a Sunday, a Wednesday, or a Friday, then Rosh Hashanah doesn't occur on that day. It's pushed off by one day. Okay? So in other words, if we figure out, according to the calculations we did, that Rosh Hashanah should be on a Sunday, then it's pushed off to a Monday. If it should be on a Wednesday, it's pushed off to a Thursday, and it should be on a Friday, then it's pushed off to Shabbat. Okay? That's the first of the Dichiyot. So we understand why people tend to get so upset about this idea of the Dichiyot, because they say, wait a second, according to the Rabbinical calendar, according to what should have been, Rosh Hashanah should have been on a Sunday, but now we're pushing it off to a Monday. But the fact of the matter is, even if it weren't pushed off, it never really necessarily should have been on a Sunday, because it's that date of the first day of Tishrei, that Molad of Tishrei, is not necessarily in line with when the new moon would be visible anyway. Okay? So far, so good, more or less? Okay. The second of the Dichiyot is what's called Molad Zaken. Okay? We all know what Molad is now, right? That's the word we've been using all along. Molad means that can mean one of two things, but in this case it means the definition of that exact point of time. So that exact point of time, that Molad of Tishrei, okay, is Zaken. Anybody know what the word Zaken means in Hebrew?
Oh.
Good. Well, Michal, of course. Anybody, I should have said anyone besides Michal. Zaken means old. Okay? So if that Molad of Tishrei is old, and I'll define what old is in a second, then it's pushed off also to the next day. Okay? What is old according to this second postponement? This is the first postponement. The second postponement. If the Molad of Tishrei occurs at more than 18 hours into the day, okay, which translates to, we say the day is starting at 6 p.m. for every day in the Rabbinical calendar. And what is 18 hours into a day that starts at 6 p.m.?
2 a.m.
Nope.
No, noon.
It's noon, the following day. So if it's noon, if it starts past noon the following day, then the day of Rosh Hashanah is pushed off by one day. Okay? So basically, and there are two other Dichiyot, okay, which are rather complicated, and we won't even go into them. I can just tell you very briefly what they are. So we have one Dichiyah, which says that the first of Tishrei is postponed to a Thursday whenever the Molad of Tishrei for a 12-month year is on Tuesday at 9 hours and 204 parts or later. Okay? And there's a fourth Dichiyah, which says, requires that the first of Tishrei is postponed to Tuesday whenever the Molad of Tishrei following the 13th month year is on Monday at 15 hours and 589 parts or later. Okay? So basically, those four Dichiyot, some of which were added, the only one that's really mentioned as being added in the time of the Talmud is this. These were added, this was added sometime after the Talmud, and the last two were probably added only in the 9th century CE. So again, the Rabbinical calendar was something that grew over time. It wasn't something that was there and static all the time. But at any rate, these two Dichiyot plus the other two that I read have the effect of pushing off Rosh Hashanah by anywhere from 1 to 2 days from what they would be if we didn't have the Dichiyot. Okay? So these postponements push off Rosh Hashanah. And what does that mean? When you push off Rosh Hashanah, what does that do? It changes this length over here. Okay, so if I had worked out those 2 points in time, the Molad of Tishrei one year and the Molad of Tishrei the next year, and I worked out the 354, if Rosh Hashanah is pushed off by a day, the second Rosh Hashanah is pushed off by a day, now the length would be 355. Okay? Or if the first Rosh Hashanah is pushed off by a day and the second one is not pushed off by a day, then the length of the year would be 353. Okay? So the Dichiot are then taken into account, and whatever those two adjacent Rosh Hashanahs work out to, whatever the length of the year is worked out to, then the entire calendar is laid out based on the formula of the months, based on how many days can be in each month. And if we need to add an extra day, we add the extra day to Cheshvan. If we need to take away a day, we take away a day from Kislev. Okay? And that's basically the way the rabbinical calendar is laid out. Okay? There's one very important thing which we didn't speak about. I'll speak about briefly, and then we'll get it into the biblical calendar, which is the whole idea of leap years in the rabbinical calendar. Okay? The idea of a leap year in the rabbinical calendar works like this. Leap years occur in 19-year cycles, and in every 19-year cycle, there are 7 leap years. Okay? Are you guys familiar with that at all? I don't know how familiar anyone is with the rabbinical calendar. Okay?
It's all Greek to us.
What's that?
It's all Greek to us.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, at any rate, so in the rabbinical calendar, there's a leap year cycle. Okay? Every 7 out of 19 years is a leap year. Okay? And what does it mean for a rabbinical year to be a leap year? It means it gets this extra month. Okay? It gives this guy over here. This Adar the first gets inserted between Shvat and Adar the second. Okay? Adar the second is the last month of the year. Nisan is the first month of the year. That's where Passover occurs. So right before, around the time of the Aviv, more or less, a little bit early, but around the time of the Aviv, we get this extra month inserted, and that's supposed to synchronize the rabbinical calendar more or less to the seasons. And it does, except for the problem of rabbinical drift, or of calendrical drift, which occurs in, as we said, in every calculated calendar, including the rabbinical calendar, including the rabbinical calendar. Okay? How does this work, and why does this work? It's based on something called the Metonic cycle. There was a Greek astronomer named Meton who lived in, I think it was the 4th century BCE. Just bring it up for 1 second. Anyway. Okay. So he introduced it into the calendar of Athens in 432 BCE, and it was clearly known by other societies even before, but it's attributed to Meton, and it's called the Metonic cycle. And what did he do, or what did he notice? Okay, we have a problem with the lunisolar calendar. We're trying to stay synchronized to 2 cycles. We're trying to stay synchronized to the cycle of the sun, okay, as seen from the Earth, or another way of saying it, the cycle of the seasons. And we're also trying to stay synchronized to the month, the cycles of the phases of the moon. Okay? And the 2 cycles are out of sync with each other. One is 29.5 days, the cycle of the moon, and one is 365 days, right? The cycle of the Earth around the sun. And if you divide 365 by 29.5, or even by 29, or even by 30, you do not get a whole number. So there's not a whole number of moon cycles that fits into an entire year, an entire seasonal or solar cycle. Okay, and that's where the problem for the lunisolar calendar comes, because we have to stay synchronized to these 2 cycles, which don't line up very equally with each other. Okay, but Meton noticed something very interesting. Okay, he noticed that in 19 tropical years, we said tropical years, a year is seen from the Earth, from one, let's say, vernal equinox to the next vernal equinox. So in 19 years, okay, solar years, I'll put it simply, in 19 solar years, that actually works out to 235 lunar months. Okay? And this was a pretty powerful or pretty important observation, because it meant that if you go through 19 entire solar years, you will have gone through 235 lunar cycles, meaning the cycles will line themselves up after 235 lunar months or 19 solar years. Okay? Now, I'm not saying the exact truth, because the fact of the matter is that they're not exactly equivalent down to the second. They're off. They differ by about 2 hours. Okay? So that, let me just get the exact numbers here. 19 years works out to 6939.602 days. What did we say? 6939.602. 0.602, and 235 lunar months works out to 6939.688. So really, the 235 lunar months is slightly larger than the 19 solar years, but it's very close. It was close enough to be of use to the calendar makers of Athens and to the rabbinical calendar makers, who clearly were getting this number and getting this idea from the astronomy that was around them. This was a very well-known phenomenon, and this was a very well-known conjunction of cycles in the ancient world, especially after Meton incorporated into the Athenian calendar and made it popular throughout the entire region. Why do I say this? Because the rabbis, as they like to do about so much knowledge, which was really general knowledge, they like to claim that this was passed down from Moses through the oral law. Okay, they actually claim that explicitly, that the secret of the Metonic cycle, the secret of the intercalation of the years in the rabbinical calendar, was a secret that was passed down through Moses, and was later used in the rabbinical calendar. Also, they claim that the period of the Molad, the 29 days, 12 hours, 44 minutes, and 3 1/3 seconds that we saw, was another secret that was passed down through the oral law. Okay, in this way, they give their oral law more stature, more precedence, more validity, and they make it sound like they're privy to some kind of secret knowledge that only if you join yourself to them and to the oral law you have access to, and that's a bunch of BS, because this was a very, very well-known astronomical phenomenon which was incorporated into many calendars in the region, including the late Babylonian calendar, the Greek calendar, the rabbinical calendar. Okay. So what does that mean, or how is this related to adding 7 months, or 7 leap months, 7 of these Adar Aleph, okay, the 7 30-day months, every 19 years? What does it do? Okay, well, we know that a typical rabbinical month has 12. A typical rabbinical year has 12 months. Okay, if we do 12 times 19, we do that calculation, it will come out to 228. Okay? 12 months times 19 years. If every rabbinical year had 12 months in it, then at the end of 19 years we would have gone through 228 rabbinical months. But the Metonic cycle says that 19 years actually has 235 lunar months. So we need, in order to catch up, we need an extra 7 months every 19 years. Okay? So we add our 7 months, 7 leap months, and we end up with our 235 months, but we end up basically replicating the Metonic cycle. Okay? And that's exactly what the rabbinical calendar does. And that's why out of every 19 years, you will get 7 leap years added in. Those 7 leap years are added in a very specific pattern. And that pattern can be remembered by the acronym in Hebrew, Guchatzat, which stands for Gimel, Vav, Chet, Aleph, Dalet, Zayin, Chet. Okay, Gimel is the 3rd letter of the alphabet, which means on the 3rd year. Vav is the 6th letter of the alphabet, which means on the 6th year. Chet is the 8th letter of the alphabet, the 8th year. Aleph is the 1st letter of the alphabet, which means the 11th. The 14th, the 17th, and the 19th year. So the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th years of the 19-year cycle have not 12 months in them, but they have that extra leap month, that extra Adar the first, and they have 13 months in them, which means that on those years, the calendar will have either 383, 384, or 385 days instead of the 353, 354, and 355 days. Okay? So to sum up again, we're picking out the calendar in a nutshell. The calendar in a nutshell works like this. Okay? I pick out my Molad Tishrei for 1 year. Okay? Then I apply my Dichiyot. That can push the first of Tishrei up 1 or 2 days. Okay? Then I pick out my Molad Tishrei for the next year, and I apply the Dichiyot, which can push it up 0, 1, or 2 days. Okay? Now I have my 2 consecutive Molads of Tishrei. I figure out exactly how many days there are between them. No, I'm sorry. First I figure out, is it a leap year? If it's a leap year, I add another 30 days to that space in between them. And now I know exactly how many days I have in between one Rosh Hodesh of Tishrei to the next Rosh Hodesh of Tishrei. Okay? It can either be 354, 354, 353, 354, 355 if it's not a leap year, or 383, 384, 385 if it is a leap year. I have 6 possible configurations. Once I know how many days my year has, then I go back and I lay out my months according to this formula right here, and that's exactly the way the rabbinical calendar works, and it's laid out. Okay? And that brings us to the end of the explanation of the rabbinical calendar. There's a lot to say about it. Very, very interesting calendar calculations that go on, very interesting phenomena that go on, but that we'll have to leave for a...
So all these complicated calculations to come up with the Tishrei beginning date.
To come up with the entire configuration of the calendar, based on the 2 consecutive Molads of Tishrei, which are then pushed ahead either 0, 1, or 2 days, based on the postponements, which then sets the amount of days between them, which can be one of those 6 amount of days, and once the amount of days between them is known, then the calendar gets laid out accordingly in between them.
Then you go and pick up a calendar.
Exactly. Then you go to the next Tishrei, do the same thing, the postponements. If it's a leap year, you add the extra 30 days, and actually first you add 30 days, and then you do the postponements, and then that tells you how many days you have here, according to one of those 6 configurations you lay out the calendar, and so on and so forth. Okay?
So you have kind of 6 templates of the 40 days, and you lay the dates in there?
Exactly. 6 templates in terms of possible year lengths. Okay? And then you lay them out according to one of those 6 templates. Okay? So the important points, now let's switch over to the biblical calendar. The important points to note are that the Molad of any given month, including the Molad of Tishrei, as we said, but I'll say it again because it's so important, is not necessarily in line with the actual visible new crescent moon. Okay? In other words, many times the rabbinical calendar will say, tonight is Rosh Hodesh Kislev. If you walk outside that night and look for the moon, you may see it or you may not see it. Okay? You may see it a day later, or you may see it a day before, sometimes even 2, and in rare cases 3 days before, and as much as 2 days later. Okay? So the attempt to synchronize with the actual visible new moon does not work in the rabbinical calendar, but it was never meant to work. Okay? It's not that the calendar is somehow has become inherently flawed because of calendrical drift, or because of some failure in its way of being set up. From its very inception, it was never intended to hit those visible new moons because it was meant to be laid out in a rather simple form, and this was the form that they chose, which is the form that many ancient calendars chose.
The new moon was not the driver.
What's that?
The new moon was not the driver.
Exactly. New moon is not the driver. The attempt of the rabbinical calendar was to get close to the new moon, but never hit it exactly on target, and to hopefully never veer too far away from it each month. Maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after each month, but it's never going to veer. It's never going to be like a solar calendar, which could be 15 days off or 10 days off. It's going to be a day or 2 off in either direction. Okay. By the way, where do the rabbis justify that? In typical rabbinical fashion, they take a statement from the Tanakh, and let me just find it here. What was that? Was that the whoopee cushions you were telling me about? Did I sit on a whoopee cushion?
We have a couple of Juna.
Oh my God. Oh boy, well, who'll be the first to put a lampshade on their head?
Too bright.
Okay, so if we look in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, how are we doing on time, by the way, Martha?
Do it.
About halfway.
45 more minutes.
Okay, great. So if we look in Exodus chapter 12, verse 2, we'll start one verse behind in verse 1. It says, "Vayomer Yehovah el Moshe ve'el Aharon ve'eretz Mitzrayim lemor." And Yehovah said to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "Achodesh hazeh lechem Rosh Hodeshim." Okay, this month shall be for you the head of the months. Okay, this is the verse that and what month is it speaking about? It's speaking about the month in which we came out of Egypt, the month of the Aviv, in the springtime, the month that we bring the Passover. Okay, what do the rabbis do? The rabbis say in typical rabbinical fashion, they interpret the verse as, and they don't really believe that this is the interpretation of the verse. They're using the language of Torah to make their points. Is really what's going on. Okay, and they say it says in verse 2, "Chodesh hazeh lachem." This month will be for you the head of the months. And they say, well, it says this month will be for you, which means that you have it's for you, meaning you have the decision you have the ultimate say on when this month is going to be. Okay, and so therefore that's their justification or their polemic for saying that we can set the calendar as we see fit, as humanity sees fit, or as in this case the rabbis see fit, rather than saying we have to go by some way that Yehovah tells us to go by. And there is some truth to that in the sense that obviously we have to make decisions on how the months are set up, but that only comes in places that are not clear. And here the system of the calendar, the system of the biblical calendar is quite clear, and it's quite straightforward, at least in the broad picture. Okay, and then the details, it's true, are not always 100% clear. But the overall picture, the overall idea about how we're supposed to set up the biblical calendar is actually not very. Bill, that's your lentil curry. Not the other way. So let me bring this up. Now, I could potentially get a little bit upset about that, except I was warned, because when I said I was coming to the Karaite gathering, Martha said explicitly that what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting whoopee cushions under Phil's chair, and we're all going to go to the other side of the room. But no one went to the other side of the room. Life is short. You got to take these things out. Okay, so let me just try to find this here.
She was laughing. You're fine.
Okay, so now this starts the part of the talk where we'll be talking about the biblical calendar rather than the rabbinical calendar. So this is really all very relevant to us. Okay. Let me just find some verses that I want to go through here. So Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 says, does anyone have a, oh, get it right here. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. Says, V'yomer Elohim, Yihi me'orot b'rakia shamayim, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament, the background of the sky, Lavdir ben hayom u'ben alayla, to distinguish between the day and between the night, V'hayu le'otot u'le'mo'adim u'leyamim u'shanim, and they shall be for signs and for mo'adim, for appointed times, for days and years. Okay? So the point is that Genesis 2:14, did we say 2 or 1? Whatever it is, Genesis 2:14, says that these lights in the sky, meaning the sun and the moon and perhaps the stars, but the sun and the moon we're really talking about here, these lights in the sky are put there for mo'adim, are put there for us to set the times of to set our appointed times. Remember yesterday we spoke about the real meaning of the word mo'ed, that it's a meeting time, okay? So it's a meeting time, a meeting place, okay? And we're supposed to be using these signs in the sky to set these mo'adim, okay? The rabbis, as they typically do, they come along and say, well, we kind of run the show, and lo b'shamayim, the Torah is no longer in heaven, it's now on earth. So we decide it's going to be a day earlier, a day later, 2 days earlier, 2 days late. It's not the end of the world. Okay, we have the right to do that. As we saw in the previous verse, this month will be for you, meaning you can decide how the month will be. Is there
So the Catholic, that's what the Catholics do.
Oh, did the Catholics? I didn't even know the Catholics had such a concept, but...
Well, the Pope is the vicar of Christ. They have whatever is born on earth is going to be born in heaven, so they have a right to change the laws.
Okay, there you go. So at any rate, we see here that really what we're supposed to be using, or the Torah tells us here explicitly that what we're supposed to be using to set these moedim are the lights in the sky, the lights that were placed in the firmament. Okay, that's the first thing. And there are other verses which point to that same idea. Maybe I'll bring 1 or 2 other verses. Psalms 104:19. Let's find here. Psalms 104:19. 4. 104:19, which says, "Asa yareach lemoadim shemesh yada mivo'o." Okay, it says explicitly He made the moon for moadim. Okay, He made the moon for setting the appointed times. Okay. And let's see if there's another verse we can look at. Oh, there are other verses, but I don't have them listed here. Okay. The point is that the lights in the sky are what we're supposed to be using to be setting the moedim. Okay. Now.
Hang on a second.
Okay. Okay. Now, how do we use these lights to set the times? Okay. The way it works is basically this. Okay. We know that we have something called Rosh Hodesh. Okay, which is the new moon. We said that we know it's the new moon because the word Hodesh means new moon essentially, but it comes from the word Hadash, which means new. Okay, so whenever it's speaking about a Chodesh or a Rosh Hodesh, then we know we're speaking about when the moon becomes new. Okay, And when does the moon become new? The moon becomes new for anyone who happens to be even a little bit of a stargazer, knows that the moon goes through its cycles, and then gets smaller and smaller, and then disappears. There's a couple of days where you cannot see the moon at all, right? Does everyone know this, or do I don't think with this crowd I need to go into this at all. But the moon disappears for a couple of days, and then suddenly appears in the evening sky right before sunset, and that's the sliver of the new moon. Okay? Has everybody here actually viewed a new moon or gone out to view a new moon? Yeah? Okay. So I don't really need to explain it because that picture is worth a lot more than 1,000 words. Okay? So we know that when we see the new moon, that new in Hebrew means hadash. Okay? And the word for new moon is Hodesh. So whenever we're speaking about the word Hodesh throughout the Tanakh, we're either speaking about a new moon or by extension a month, because the month is counted from the point of time that new moon becomes visible. Okay? So that's the first thing. So the first thing to realize is that the biblical calendar is also a lunisolar calendar, just like the rabbinical calendar. But the difference between the rabbinical calendar and the biblical calendar is that the biblical calendar is a lunisolar calendar by observation rather than by calculation. And because it's a calendar of observation rather than calculation, we have none of the inherent problems of a calendar that you would find in a calendar of calculation. There's no such thing as calendrical drift. There's no such thing as being a day early or a day late or 2 days early or 2 days late, because we're not trying to predict what the years and months are going to be. There's no such thing as, remember we spoke originally about an artificial year and an artificial month. There's no such concept here. We only read the real month. We only read the real year. And the way we read the real month is when we see that new crescent moon in the western sky right before sunset. Okay? And that's what synchronizes us with the month, is the new crescent moon. What synchronizes us with the year is the... What's that? Not the equinox, but you said it there? Yeah, the Aviv. Okay? When we see that the barley has reached its state of ripeness, which we know is Aviv, and I don't think any of you guys have ever been on the Aviv trip, but I would highly recommend it. It's very, very special time, especially because the land of Israel is in the height of its spring season. Everything is green, wildflowers all over the place. It's very, very beautiful. And just the idea of going out and searching for and finding the Aviv barley and declaring it and looking for the new moon and saying that that's now the moon of the Aviv. It's a very, very special experience, and I recommend it for everybody. But basically what we do is we go out and we look for this barley, and when it's reached the state of Aviv, which the only way I can describe it is it's kind of when you take the barley seed, and this is, I have to preface by saying this is Nehemiah's definition, and what I'm explaining here is his definition, and but that's the definition that I've been using when I've been going out with the Karaite groups there. So when you take the barley seed and peel it back, and then you kind of pop it or kind of break it with your fingers, it's still white and soft inside, but it's not runny. It's kind of like almost like a cooked egg. That's the only way I can explain it. If it's too early, then when you pop it, it'll be soft and runny, and it'll flow out like milk. And if it's too late, then it will already get hard and it will have lost its whiteness. So it'll kind of turn a light brown or a yellow. So the definition, the working definition that I've been using since I've been hanging out with the Karaite group in Jerusalem is this state of the barley ripeness, and again, according to the way Nehemiah runs it with his group, that once you find a certain amount, I can't remember exactly what he says, three fields, they set up a whole definition for it. And once you find this amount of Aviv, then the next new moon after that becomes the new moon of the Aviv, and that's the month in which the Passover offering is brought, and that's the month in which the Chag HaMatzot is kept. How are we doing on time over there?
Yeah, we're doing fine.
Okay. So maybe I'll should I stop now and we'll just continue the rest of this in another chunk, or Or should we, it looks like everyone's kind of...
Where the hell go? I think we're way too much.
Well, you can keep going because this is being recorded.
Right, I hear you. Okay, yeah, okay, I guess we'll just finish off.
Forgive me.
So are there any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So, so that's the way the biblical calendar synchronizes. Yes, Bill?
The moon was created for Moed.
Right, okay.
Mm-hmm. There is a concept of Karma
Mm-hmm.
from the same Jewish perspective.
I already know what you're going to say, but go ahead, yeah.
Something called lunar Shabbat.
Right, yeah.
And in Leviticus 23, the first appointment, Shabbat, was also called a part of the Moed.
Right, sure. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just clarify what this lunar Shabbat is. I heard about it about 2 years ago, and I just want to make sure I remember it. They say that the Shabbat starts. You start counting the Shabbat from the first day of the month, right? So what you have is a situation.
No.
So you want to explain how does it work then?
You want me to?
Yeah, please.
There's actually different theories on how this is Jack, by the way.
Mm.
There's different theories on how the lunar Sabbath, the lunar Shabbat, how it works. Basically, the people look at this Shabbat as one of the moeds
Mm-hmm.
in Leviticus 23, Bible 23.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they do is it's listed there. And since the moon is a way of determining, it determines how the months are consumed, or months are determined. It also, annual holy days, it also would determine the Shabbat. And the way they would do it is they would say, you work 6 days and then you rest the seventh.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally it's the 8th day of the month would be a Shabbat, then the 15th day, then the 22nd day,
Right.
then the 29th day would be a Shabbat.
So the first day of the month is a Shabbat, and then the 8th.
No.
Okay.
We'll come back around here.
Okay.
All right. So it would say, well, in a way it's a Shabbat, but it's actually called a new moon.
Okay.
So they say the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and then the 29th is a Shabbat.
Right.
Okay, depending upon the phase of the moon, on average is what, as you said, 29.53 days.
A month is going to be either 29 or 30 days.
It's 29, 30
Right.
days. So some months are going to have a 29-day, 29-day cycle.
Right.
And some will have a 30.
Right.
All right. So what we're saying, what they're saying is that the 29th day is a Shabbat. So then you could go to 30,
Right.
and then the first, or you can go right to the first. So some
Right.
days will have 30 in it,
Right.
and then some days will have
Some months. Yeah.
some months will have 30 in it,
Right.
and some will have just 29.
Right.
So you would say the 29th day
Mm-hmm.
is a Shabbat,
Right.
and so then they would say the 30th
Is
is a new moon,
okay.
and then the first is a new moon.
Okay.
If it's a longer month.
Yeah.
If it's not a longer month,
Right.
they would say the 29th day is the Shabbat.
Uh-huh.
Then the first day is the month.
Is the new moon.
Right. So what they're doing is it's based on the sighting of the moon,
Uh-huh.
but they do it mainly on conjunction.
So what you're saying basically is that they are saying there are exactly four Shabbats in a month.
Right.
They fall out on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th.
Right. And also, what they're doing is when you see the sliver,
Mhm.
it's not the sighting that makes the new moon. It's actually the time that says you can go back to work. So when you see the visible crescent, you know it's time to go back to work.
Which means that you're going to end up with a situation, if between the 29th and the 8th, you're going to end up with a situation where you have more than 7 days without a Shabbat, basically. Right.
More than 7 days without a Shabbat.
Sure, the 29th of a month is a Shabbat, and the next Shabbat falls on the 8th of the next month, right?
Well, no, their argument is not looking at every 7 days of the Shabbat. What they're saying is you don't go more than 6 days of working. and then you have a rest period. And they treat the new moons as a like in Amos 8:5, they treat the new moon as a day of rest, just like the Shabbat. So what you'll have is at the end of every month, you'll have a 2-day or 3-day celebration, like David did with Jonathan, and they're talking in Aleph Shmuel 20, when they were sitting in the field. If you look at that example.
Sure.
Okay, so what they're trying to say is we should be celebrating new moons. It talks about it explicitly in the Tanakh. And we're going to therefore have, a longer rest period at the end of every month.
I got it. And when you see the new moon, that you're saying the next day you go back to work.
Exactly. And so basically the full moon, you're going to fall in the seasons because on the basically the conjunction, the full moon, and the 2 half moons, 2 quarter moons.
I got it. Okay, at any rate, it's a very interesting idea. But I think it's a ridiculous idea, and I'll tell you why I think it's a ridiculous idea. The main reason that I think it's a ridiculous idea is because the idea of the Shabbat is it's supposed to take place every 7 days. Okay? Now, the fact that you've decided between 2 consecutive 7 days to add in a couple more days of rest, that's very nice. But Rosh Hodesh does not say anywhere in the Tanakh that on Rosh Hodesh you're not allowed to do melacha. There may be some evidence that in ancient times maybe that's what they did. Maybe they made those days of celebration. But the Tanakh does not command us not to do melacha on.
Well, but their argument. Repeat my question or my statement. The people who believe in this, that says that the Scripture doesn't command it. You have a Sabbath every 7 days. It says you're not supposed to work more than 7 days. If you look at the command in Hebrew.
No, it does not say that. It says on the 7th day is the Shabbat for Yehovah your God. Okay, so it's, and that day is not just the day of not working. It's also a day that's supposed to be holy, however we define holy. The point is that I don't think that holds water at all, because the seventh day is supposed to be the Shabbat. It's supposed to be a day where it's absolutely forbidden to do any type of melacha, and this very much disrupts the pattern. I think that what's going on there with the actual Shabbat is the idea of a week, that you work for your 6 days, 7th day off. You can work for 6 days, 7th day off. If in the middle of the week your boss decides to give you an extra couple of days off, hey, that's nice, If you want to work, you can work. If you don't want to work, you don't have to work. But there's certainly an explicit commandment not to work on Shabbat, and there certainly is not an explicit commandment not to work on Rosh Hodesh. So
and they would also argue too, and I'll just throw this out, that there's no way that we can say that our Saturday Sabbath is a continuous Sabbath from the time of creation, and that we have no proof that Saturday is the Shabbat.
Irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. When I gave my talk on Shabbat, I guess now about a month and a half ago, one of the things I said is that I don't think we have to be in sync with that original Shabbat, or that original Saturday. The whole idea of the Shabbat is, first and foremost, it's an idea of social justice, that those who are less privileged in society will have a day of rest, one out of every 7 days. And if I was stuck tomorrow on a desert island and I'd been unconscious and I woke up and I don't know how long I'd been unconscious, then what I think could be done is that I would work 6 days and the 7th day of rest. Work 6 days and the 7th day of rest. It may turn out that day I'm resting is a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Sunday, or maybe it would be a Shabbat. But I don't think it's relevant. We're talking that the Shabbat here, first and foremost, has a social aspect, and that's that every 7th day, from whenever you want to start counting, is a day of rest. Another thing that I'll point out is that Shabbat is not a moed. Okay? That's a misreading of Leviticus 23, and I'll just bring it up for 1 second. Shabbat in Leviticus 23 is called a Mikra Kodesh, meaning a holy convocation, but it's never called a moed. Although for the non-experienced reader, one could think that it is. And let me just bring it up.
I don't get that social justice part.
What's that?
I don't get that social justice part. I don't think God is communist.
Communism and social justice are not the same thing. The point is that God, the Tanakh says explicitly, the Torah says explicitly, that the reason you shall rest on the seventh day is so that your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, your ox, your ger, and I can't remember there are a couple of different statements that will have a day of rest. That's really the reason of Shabbat, that all of us can rest, right? It even says in the first statement of the Shabbat that when God rested, when Yahweh rested after making creation, it says the Shabbat v'nafesh, okay, or Shabbat v'nafash, meaning he rested and literally he restored his soul. By resting, one restores their soul, right? They're able to then get up and get what they need to do, get done what they need to do the next week. So I think the aspect of Shabbat is ultimately an aspect of social justice. If not, what do you think it is in Suriel's Shul?
He decided he wanted to rest from his creation, and he ordered man to rest also. That's all I see into it.
No, but it says a lot more. But it explicitly says we don't have to start even speculating. If you look at the places where Shabbat is mentioned, it says explicitly, you will rest so that your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant will rest. Another place, you will rest so that your ox and the ger and the convert, or however you want to translate ger, will be able to rest. What's that? Proselyte will be able to rest. The reason is not something hidden or secret. The reason is given explicitly in many statements of the Shabbat. Okay, looking at Leviticus 23, this is Vidaber Yehovah el Moshe lemor, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the children of Israel, Wamata aleim mo'adei Yehovah asher these are the appointed times, the meeting times of Yehovah, which you shall proclaim them as holy convocations. This is really a bad printout of it. If anyone has it, I can open this in another browser. One second. These are my appointed times. And then it goes on to say, Sheshit Yamim Tasem Melacha V'Yom Shvi Shabbat Shabbaton Mikra Kodesh Kol Melacha Lo Ta'asu. Okay, so then in Leviticus 23:3, it says 6 days you shall do your work, and on the seventh day is the Shabbat, the day of rest, the holy convocation. You shall not do any work. Shabbat Ki Yehovah. It is the Shabbat to Yehovah. B'chol Moshvotechem, in all your habitations. And then in verse 4 it says, Ela Moedei Yehovah. Then it says, these are the appointed times of Yehovah, Mikra'ei Kodesh, Shetikru Otam B'moadam. The holy convocations, you shall call them in their appointed times. So we see that in verse 4, it's then really starting the Moedim. The Torah works, it'll give a general introduction, and then certain things will be part of that introduction, and then it'll actually go into the details. So Shabbat is mentioned in the same chapter of the Moedim, but it's not a Moed. Shabbat is not technically a Moed. It's a Mikra Kodesh, it's a holy convocation, but it's not an appointed time. So that falls apart, that part of the argument.
So you're saying that in verse 2 and verse 4, there's a different Hebrew word for the feast?
There are two words that are going on here. Okay, there's one that's Moed, which is an appointed time. There's another one that's Mikra Kodesh, which is usually translated as holy convocation.
Oh, no, I'm not. Okay.
Oh, okay.
In verse 2 and in verse 4, in English, it talks about the appointed seasons.
Right.
Okay. Where it's translated in Hebrew for the appointed seasons,
right,
it is the same Hebrew word in verse 2 and in verse 4.
It's the same word. It's the same word, and it means exactly the same thing. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, then how do you make that argument that it's two different types of moedim?
I'm not even making the argument. When I'm saying that argument, when I'm saying something entirely different, what I'm saying is that the Torah here in Leviticus 23 is introducing the concept of, or saying now, what we're going to talk about now is the appointed times. Okay? And then it says, and also you have the Shabbat, which is a holy convocation.
That's your interpretation. Okay.
It's my interpretation, but I think it's
a pattern.
Yeah.
Well, but it starts off saying it starts in the chapter off saying these are the appointed times.
I
So it's
understand.
saying, and so it's just, so now we're going to say that, okay, he's going to make an exception in verse 3, and then he's going to make an exception in verse 4. I'm just trying to understand, because I'm playing devil's advocate.
No,
okay?
go for it. there's no problem with that whatsoever. I'll say a couple things, okay? First of all, this is, as Bill said, it's a very typical pattern of the way the Tanakh works. Often it'll give a certain introduction, and it'll give certain peripheral introductory information, and then it'll repeat the introduction and go into the actual details. And we see this pattern repeated here. This is going to be about the Moedim. Also, you have the Shabbat, and here are the actual Moedim.
But it's clearly saying right after it says these are the appointed seasons, he goes into verse 3 about the Shabbat.
But if you see in verse 3, it never calls it a Moed. It calls it a Mikvah Kodesh. It calls it a holy convocation.
Yeah, but also there's holy convocations, because the argument of the, let me just say, the argument of the lunar Shabbat people, they would say the 15th of the 7th month and the 22nd are regular Sabbaths.
Right.
So the first day and the 8th day of the feast of Sukkot are the two Sabbaths.
Yeah, it's a very nice argument, but I don't think it plays out in the text. I can say a couple more things, but let me throw it back at you. If you look at verse 4, if Shabbat is a Moed, then why does it say in verse 4, these are the Moedim, these are the appointed times of Yehovah? Why does it say it again?
Well, why did he? Yehovah repeats himself quite frequently.
Not that way.
But not exactly. That's the point. If he's not going to, he doesn't say it again. He doesn't say it at each holiday. These are the appointed times. It's following a pattern where it gives an introductory verse where it says, okay, I now am going to talk about appointed times. Okay. And then it gives some introductory information, which in this case happens to be Shabbat. Why? Because although it's not technically an appointed time, it has certain similarities to appointed time.
This is how I'm reading it. Speaking of the children of Israel, saying to them, the appointed season of Yehovah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my appointed seasons. 6 days. So now we're going to go into it. 6 days shall work be done, but on 7th day is a Sabbath of solemn rest. Right. Holy convocation, which is used later on with the holy days. You shall do no manner of work. It is the Sabbath to Yehovah of your dwellings.
Right.
So this is talking about the continuous Sabbath. Now we're going to go into the special Sabbaths of the 7th-day week, of the ones that are related to the harvest of the agricultural cycle.
I understand why you say that, and maybe if I could find another example.
Okay.
But the only thing you could say is this is why it's so important to get oneself into the language and the mood of the Tanakh, because a lot.
But if you're telling me it's the same Hebrew words, then I don't see the logic. But okay, go ahead.
Because it's not a matter of the words themselves; it's a matter of the mood that's created in Hebrew.
The context.
Yeah, and things in Hebrew are not in English in general. Things are very black and white, and in Hebrew things are much more. It's almost like an Eastern.
Can you repeat for Pierre what I had said? Because she's asking. She says, "I wish we could hear the things being said at the gathering from the audience." I realize you.
Okay. Maybe you want to come up here and say them, or
Do you want me to?
Okay, I'll summarize real quick.
yeah, sure.
Are we gonna run out of time on that thing? Probably.
We still have
Some time. This is Jack. I'm just playing devil's advocate because I have some friends who believe in it. Basically, I brought up to him, if you look at Vayikra 23, and in verse 2, I was asking if there was a difference in the Hebrew, since I'm not as knowledgeable as the Hebrew as Melekh. I wanted to see if the word for appointed times or feast in some translations, if there's a difference in the Hebrew from verse 2 versus verse 4. And if I read it correctly in verse 2, there is no special exception for the weekly Shabbat. And from what I heard in the argument is that the weekly Shabbat is continuous throughout the whole year. And then what it does is that when it goes to verse 4, it's not like it's saying that it is now we're talking about a different type of moedim. What it's saying is now we're going to go and speak about these that are related to the annual times of the year, basically towards the agricultural cycle. So now you're going to follow these different types of things, do special things of the weekly Shabbats, and you're going to do it. And so that's why the argument of the lunar people is, for example, this time that we're keeping now, we're keeping the 15th and the 22nd. Their feeling is that we're keeping Sukkot between two weekly Sabbaths, 15th being the first, and then the 8th day would be the 22nd. And then, so there is no Shabbat in between. We're actually keeping our Sukkot, the special time, and the ingathering of the end of the year. And so we're keeping a celebration, a special celebration between these two weekly Shabbats. Now, that's their argument. I just wanted to see if there was a difference in the Hebrew, which I'm finding out there's not, but he's telling me that there's a difference in context of the Scripture, and maybe he's going to show me another place in another part of the Tanakh.
Okay, one correction. The Sukkot, first day and last day, are Shabbat ones, but not Shabbats.
That's right.
Okay.
Shabbat.
Even though you're not supposed to, but see, there are two terminologies.
Yeah.
One, Shabbat, Shabbaton.
But the Tanakh never defines the difference between Shabbat and Shabbat.
No, it does. It's a very, very clear distinction.
But there's a pattern. Shabbat, weekly Shabbat is Shabbat, Shabbaton.
Well, then by that argument, the Day of Atonement is a Shabbat.
That's right.
No, yeah, it is.
Okay.
The Day of Atonement is also called Shabbat, Shabbaton.
Right.
Those are the only two weekly Shabbat and annual Shabbat.
But no, but the Day of Atonement is not called a Shabbat.
It is called.
It is. It's called Shabbat Shabbaton.
It's called Shabbat,
Yeah.
Shabbaton.
If I'll just, this is,
All right.
I wish, if you want, when I did the talk on Shabbat, I went into this in great
Oh, you did?
detail.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'd like to hear that.
But basically, Shabbaton means a day where resting occurs. And Shabbat is a title. It's a proper noun, okay? And a Shabbat means it's the title of the day that occurs every seventh day on which we have a Shabbaton, on which we're not doing any or resting from work. There are two other things in the Torah that are called by the word Shabbat. Bill mentioned one, which is Yom Kippurim, okay? Because it's a form of Shabbat. Why? Because unlike the other holidays, which are called Shabbaton, where you have to more or less stop from work, but you're still allowed to cook, and it's not as strict. Yom Kippurim is Shabbat. It's like a Shabbat in the fact that you're not allowed to light a fire. You're not allowed to do any work whatsoever, and it puts it in very kind of clear, stark language that you're not supposed to be doing any work on that day. So by extension, Yom Kippur is like a Shabbat.
Yeah, but the argument that the Lunar Sabbath people would make
Right.
is that if he uses the word Shabbaton,
Right.
you turn these weekly Sabbaths into the annual feast where you can cook and do different things. So they're calling the regular Shabbos of those times a Shabbaton. So they're using a different terminology. And that would mean, like, for example, if we have our first day of Sukkot fall on a Saturday,
Right.
then we can cook on it. And it'll become, instead of a weekly Shabbat, it'll become a Shabbaton.
That's what they're saying?
No, that's what we would do, wouldn't we?
I'm not saying that at all.
No, but see, here's the thing. If we happen to have a Saturday to a Saturday Sukkot,
Then
it's
Shabbat.
Shabbat. Well,
you don't do the cooking.
Well, wait a minute. You can't have it both ways because it's a Shabbaton, because then we have to follow Leviticus 23.
No, but first of all, the Shabbat takes over in precedence. Because
Who said?
What's that?
Who said? See, that's the interpretation.
Right.
What the point of the matter is,
Mm-hmm.
there is an argument for everything you're saying. They would say, in the early argument that you're saying, you would have 6 days you'd work, 7 days rest. There is nothing forbidding to have a 2-3 day extension of a Sabbath. Then you work 6 days and then you have a rest day. There is no a refraining. Yes, you have a Sabbath every 7th day, but there's no forbidding of continuing that Sabbath for another 2 days, then working 6 days and the 7th day to rest.
I don't see that pattern at all. It speaks about 6 days Shabbat, then another 6 days in Shabbat, another 6 days Shabbat. At any rate, I don't want to get too bogged down on it, because it could be something that could go on for days and days and days. But I gave you my interpretation of the various verses and taking the lead. Okay, so maybe we'll just sum up. I think we pretty much covered everything we wanted to cover. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we'll just,
You did a good job.
It's a very difficult topic.
it's a very detailed topic. There's no doubt about it.